You know, since LastPass got allegedly, they're saying it was partially hacked, by the way. Since that happened, I've been working on a password manager. This is my password manager. And you may notice that it's kind of familiar. So I figured, you know what? I'm going to build my own password manager. And in fact, I was wondering if you would give me a hand. And perhaps this is something that we could do together. And so basically, what I'm planning on doing is building the world's best password manager. Forgive me if I'm a bit croaky, I'm just up. But in any event, I was wondering if you could give me a hand, and I'm going to be asking you to please vote, okay? So let's do this together. And today, you get a chance to shape the next generation of password manager. This is going to be our first vote. There may be others, but this is the first vote. Now, you're going to be given two choices at the end of this video. Do you want plan A or plan B? I promise that I shall respect the results of the vote. However, I'm not willing to give you the vote unless I've given you a little bit of an education, because I want all of us to be quite clear about what this means and how it works and what we're talking about. So with your permission, I'm going to give you maybe about 10 minutes education, let's say, on encryption, password management apps and stuff like that. Then when I've given you the information, I'm going to present you with two plans or two pathways, let's say, and then I'm going to be handing it over to you. Fair enough? Okay, so let's do the education part, and here we go. I'll be as fast as I can, right? Now, okay, so I've written this thing which is called what they're claiming, and I know bullet points are annoying, right? When I say they, I'm talking about the password manager app providers, at least most of them, the good ones at least. Bitwarden, as far as I can tell, LastPass as well. This is what they're claiming, and this here can be considered industry standards, let's say. So I'm going to give you a little education on how this stuff works. If you have not used LastPass before or any of those password managers, here's what it looks like. You click up here, you enter a master password, and from there you can go on in and add website records and passwords and things like that. So what they say is that only the user, that's you or the customer, knows what the master password is. Secondly, the master password gets used to decrypt data. And without the master password, your data cannot be decrypted. This is what they're claiming. Now, I would question this claim, at least with LastPass, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But this is what they're claiming, right? The next thing that they say is that the master password does not get stored anywhere. At least it does not get stored on any server that they have, right? The master password is stored in RAM and in the user's head, right? So imagine the situation. You've signed in, okay? So you've just signed in and you've entered your master password, and now you're going to create, read and update records, and you might be doing that for 20 minutes. Now, as you're reading and updating records, there's a whole bunch of encryption and decryption going on. So what they're saying, to be clear, is that all of that encryption and decryption depends upon the master password, and the master password, after they've logged in, is stored in RAM. Now, when I heard that, I thought, well, why not just store it in a cookie or a session or a local storage or something like that? The consensus is that whilst doing that might be okay for some applications, for something as sensitive as this type of app, it's not acceptable. Cookies can be corrupted, right? So that's why when you enter your master password, it gets stored in RAM. When you log out, the master password gets cleared from RAM. So let's say that you have somewhere where you've got a PHP variable that says something like const master pass is whatever. So you'll log in and this will get set on the client side actually, not on the server side. So now you're doing whatever you're doing and your computer's saying, okay, the pass is whatever. And as soon as you log out, the master pass gets cleared. And that effectively means that your computer is uncorruptible. So you could use it at an airport, for example, okay? So that's what we're saying here. They also say that they never store meaningful records on the server, only blobs of encrypted data. So, assuming that it's a password manager app, you might have an email account where your email address is info@blah.com, your username is John, and your pass is pass. What they're saying is they never store that. All they store is this junk, jumbled up encrypted junk. That's all they store. They never decrypt anything on the server. Instead, they send it back to you as a decrypted blob of stuff, and your master password is the thing that gets used to decrypt it. Now, where does it decrypt it? Client side or server? Touch the screen. If you said client side, congratulations, you have passed the test. You are qualified to do the vote, okay? So that's what they're saying. Now, finally, all of the decryption and encryption happens on the client side, not on the server. Okay, so that's how they claim that this works. I don't believe them. At least, I don't believe LastPass. And I'll tell you why. It's very simple. If you go to Google and do a search for LastPass, what to do if you've lost your master password, they've got a video that went up 2 weeks ago that explains multiple steps that you can go through to reset your password. And here's the screen here. This is from LastPass. Now, I actually left a comment. I said, to me, this does not compute. I understand that the master password is used for encryption and decryption. If the user is the only entity with the master password, then it means that the user should be the only person who has the ability to initiate a decrypt event. With that being the case, any master password reset feature would require the server to have the ability to decrypt records, something that we are told is only possible with a master password. So how does any of what they're saying make any sense? Can the server decrypt or not? If so, how? Now clearly, in the case of LastPass, let's just write this, fact, okay? LastPass, if ever there was a need for capitals, here it is, can decrypt your data. How do we know? This is how we know. This here. The fact that they've got a recovery mechanism proves that they can decrypt your data. And you can call this a world exclusive, by the way, because I am saying that all world exclusive, all of LastPass has almost certainly been hacked. And I can say that because we know that they can decrypt your data. So that's my assumption. We must assume that it's all been hacked, because what this video does not tie in with this. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, that's their problem, and I think that it's only a matter of time before the penny drops and people figure that out for themselves. What I'm really interested in, though, is what are we going to do? I'm almost at the stage where I'm going to be asking you to vote, so please stay with me here, right? Now, I wrote an article on the Trongate website recently, and then I won't read the whole article, but in the article, I was just kind of starting on this journey, and I made a claim. It was pretty much just my gut instinct. And I made the claim here that basically, it was probably an inside job. It would have probably been either a bad employee or an evil web host. I think it was human error, let's say, that caused this thing to happen. But I also said in the conclusion here, it's time to come to terms with the thought that your data is not safe, even if you're using a password manager. The most important question of all might not be to do with encryption or programming. It might be, is my password manager being handled by an upstanding, ethical and responsible company? And how do you know who they are? I don't know. But in any event, two-factor authentication seems to be good, but it doesn't solve the fundamental error, because what I believe, this is a personal thing, I believe that the developer will always be able to figure out what your passwords are. I wish that wasn't true. Okay? So this is pretty much my own beliefs, right? What I believe. I'm willing to go into this in more detail if you want. But this is something that I wrote about in that article, and I stand by it. I think I was right. The developer will always be able to figure out what your passwords are if they're determined enough. I also believe that the same applies to employees of any web hosting company who have access to the server. So everything that we are saying about the bad employee theory, same applies if there's an evil web host, let's say. And again, I wish it wasn't true. I really, really wish it wasn't true. I also believe that the more devs who have access to the server, then the more the risk of a hack increases. In my article, to go back to it, I went into detail about what probably happened. You can read it if you want. Here's the code that they probably used and all of that. So the more devs and web hosts, for that matter, who have access to the server, the more the risk of a hack increases. I also believe that one of the main problems with LastPass is an employee. This phrase, an employee, because there seems to be a general consensus that an employee must have somehow got access to the data, perhaps saved it to a hard drive, perhaps colluded with some bad people, who knows? But I'm bothered by an employee, because an employee is perfectly faceless, nameless, genderless, perfectly anonymous, and has the ability to easily hide in plain sight. To me, this is not good enough. I want to see, if somebody's going to have access to the server, I believe that they should have a face and a name and massive, massive accountability. For example, if I was the singular employee who had access, I'd be perfectly happy to say, I'm the guy who has access, by the way. Here's my face, here's where I live. If anything happens, blame me. That's called massive accountability, and you're never going to see it from a company like LastPass. All you're going to get is an employee. So again, my world exclusive, and I really am, I think, the first person to say this. I believe that LastPass has been completely hacked. Whether they've got access to the master password, I don't think they have actually, but my speculation is that there's a fallback master password on the server. And if you've got access to that, it's just as good as a master password. With that being the case, I believe that LastPass has been completely hacked. Okay, so now we're going to come up with two options that I'm going to put to you. Thank you so much for listening. We're almost there. Now, plan A And it's a shame because none of these are going to be perfect, right? But plan A would be to build a system that's similar to Bitwarden. Now, Bitwarden is an open source password manager, and they follow all of this protocol here. And I've told you how it works, and we could build a system like that. Yeah, we could do that. The trouble is that it's not a convenient system, because when you're building a password management app, there's always this ongoing battle between convenience and security. And there's a whole lot about the Bitwarden system that's not convenient. I mean, I don't even like master passwords that much, actually. I'm not very good at choosing passwords, and I see the master passwords as being a weakness. I also, incidentally, think that I'll save it for another video, but I think that there's other errors, or let's just say things that they could be doing better, but I'll save it for another video. But in any event, we could build a system that's similar to Bitwarden. That means sticking by this model here. It kind of makes us a little bit of a me too. But I suppose we could do that. Like I say though, it's not a massively convenient model. Here is plan B. Now plan B is a little bit more complicated. But plan B would be to build a system that does have a fallback password mechanism in place. So let me just show you the type of thing I mean. If I take you back to my own little password manager here, you would create an account, and when you create an account, you'd get a recovery code, we'll call it, right? If I zoom you in, and it would say store the code above in a safe place. It's just like when you get crypto or something like that, you know? I mean, real crypto, right? And you would say okay, and then when they hit continue, have you taken a note of your recovery code? Yes, I have. Do you understand that you should never share your recovery code with anyone else? Yes, I understand. Do you understand that we will never contact you and ask for your recovery code? Yes. You alone are responsible for this recovery code. Do you agree? Yes. And at that point, we create an account. This is plan B. Now, that fallback password, let's just call it a recovery code in place, right? So we would have a recovery code in place, but it would also have a system like hybrid auth. So basically you'd have no master password. If I can just show you an example, if we take the Trongate website here and we go to login, do you see how we've got these options for login with Google, login with Twitter, Facebook, etc.? You would have that. So you would have no master password. Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? No master password at all. You would log in with something like Google, Facebook, Apple. I mean, I can add another 50 of these buttons here quite easily. And the idea is that we would use third-party authentication. So something like Google, and they would handle the two-factor authentication. Probably not me, right? So I presume that you've got a relationship with Google or Apple or Microsoft or somebody. I'm assuming all of you have, actually. So you would use their two-factor authentication to log in. That would log you in, right? At the point of being logged in, at the point of being logged in, your client, that's your browser, would generate let's just call it a temp master password. And at that point, you're able to use the system using the same mechanism as the other providers. If you forget your password, then you'd have the option of using your emergency recovery code, which I've already showed you what that looks like. That would be the thing that looks a bit like this, okay? And there's a bit more information about the recovery code if you want to find out a bit more. Now, the recovery code in this situation and the two-factor authentication from third parties gives massive levels of convenience. That's one of the pros. It would be a really, really cool system. But I'm being entirely honest. The recovery code is a weak link. It's always going to be a weak link. And as long as the moment a provider says, here's what to do, right? Every provider's going to have to answer the question, what happens when you lose your password, right? The only acceptable answer to somebody who's lost their password should be tough luck. Tough luck. There's nothing you can do. There's no password reset. There's no nothing. Because either the master password gets stored on the server or it does not. Or at least the mechanism for recovering data. Once again, I'm not seeing too many people saying tough luck. And I think if you did say tough luck, it would be perhaps a duff experience. So whilst tough luck would be a good thing to say from a security perspective, you can see how, and I'm labouring the point, right? So, I'm being entirely honest with all of you. Hey YouTube, this is good. However, I think that it's a potential weakness. So how do we mitigate that weakness with Plan B? This is the last part before we vote, okay? The way that we reduce any risk from Plan B is to have the site, is to never have any recovery code stored on one server. So, it just so happens that back in the early 90s, for a very short while, I used to work for the National Australia Groups, a very, very big bank, you know? And have you ever wondered what happens when you hand in a check? I have a problem with that word. What happens when you hand in a paper check? I like that spelling, but I think some people spell it like that. What happens when you hand in a paper check at the bank? How does that work? Usually you wait 3 or 4 days, as you'll know. Well, what happens when you hand in a check is the check gets sent to an office where one person looks at the check, they've got an inbox, they dial into the account, they say, okay, does this check look good? Does the customer have enough money? Does everything here look okay? And this person sitting at the desk either gives a green light or a red light. If they give a green light, the check gets put in an envelope and sent maybe even 200 miles to another office. This is why it takes usually 4 or 5 days. It gets sent to another office. The second person looks at the check, takes it out the envelope, and they say, does this look okay? Is there enough funds in the account? If they're doing their job right, they might look at the signature and all of that stuff. And they'll say, okay, I think this is fine. And then they send it in an envelope. It gets shipped off to a third person. They do the same thing. They look at it. They say, is this fine? And then If we get 3 lights, then it's showtime at the Apollo. Money gets transferred. That's how the paper check system has worked for decades. And by the way, I was number 2 in the chain, just so you know. So I really know what I'm talking about, right? Now, this system for paper checks has been in use for decades, and it has been proven to be a really, really good system. As I said, I was number 2 in the chain, but I did not know who number 1 was. I had no means of knowing who this person was, or number 3. And the whole system was built that way by design. And now you know. So, with regards to our own system, we would do a similar thing. So the recovery code would never be stored on one server. If you take this recovery code here, for example, it would probably be encrypted. You know, that's a given. Client or server side, haven't decided. But the recovery code would be broken up and sent to 3 different servers that are with 3 different hosting companies. This means that we have 100% protection from the evil web host theory. As a matter of fact, it also means that if one of the servers gets hacked, who cares? Because they'd have to do it again on the other servers. And by the way, each server would use a different encryption algo. How you like that? So in order for somebody to get your data, they would have to hack 3 different hosting companies that are entirely unrelated. Then they would have to figure out a way to crack 3 entirely different but very secure encryption algos. This is Plan B. Now, the thing about Plan B is, I think that it's a more convenient system, because the idea of being able to just log in and click on a thing where it says log in with Google or something, that type of arrangement, like this type of thing here, I love it. I love the idea of getting rid of the master password. And I like the idea of using the same principle that the banks have used with paper checks for decades. It's a proven system. However, as much as this system is good, I cannot escape the fact, unfortunately, and I'm being upfront about it, there's no getting away from it. There is no getting away from the fact that the developer or developers of such an app would always have a means of getting to the data. And I really, really wish that wasn't true. I can assure you, I'm not sitting here plotting getting passwords. It's just true. Now, as a matter of fact, even if we followed all of this, I still think that nothing has been solved, by the way. Because let's assume we build a system like this and we do a Me Too and we make it like Bitwarden. Okay, so who's going to have access to the server? Now, if it's a big, massive open source community, oh, that's great. Kumbaya. We're all being really democratic here, isn't it fantastic? But remember, the more people who have access, the more risk. Actually, the risk grows exponentially. And I don't think that this solves the problem. So I'm being perfectly upfront with you folks. I think that every solution out there boils down to the fact that the developers of such an app would always have a means of getting to the data. Now, we can, of course, build activity trackers and we can potentially put photographs on screen and everything, but this is where we are. I've babbled on for ages and ages. So I've given you 2 general plans here. Plan A, Plan B. I hope that you found this interesting. Now, I'm asking you to vote if you would. Please vote. And if you've listened this long into it, then I really respect your vote. In fact, could you please add the word or the phrase super cool? Add this to your comment and it will confirm to me that you've listened to the whole video. If you add the word super cool, your vote will be doubled. Add the phrase super cool anywhere in your comment and your vote gets doubled. I'm asking you, plan A or plan B? Let me know which plan it is. Please, I can't do any variations on this just now. But please be clear on which of the two you would like. I'm going to be watching the comments. Don't forget to add this phrase and your vote will be doubled. And I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.